From ships to computers to statues and even the very first customer complaint letter ever recorded, here are the top 10 strangest things recovered from tribal colonies. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot we have the Oseberg Ship. This Viking vessel was built to be either sailed or rowed, and what made it such a fascinating discovery is the fact that it is very ornate and detailed, but it has also been preserved exceptionally well. It dates back to around the year 820 and it was found in a large burial mound in 1904. Like I mentioned, this was a Viking vessel, and for anyone who isn't familiar, the Vikings were an ancient warrior tribe from Scandinavia, and they are known to have conducted raids in different parts of both Eastern and Western Europe. The Oseberg ship is definitely one of the finest artifacts to ever be recovered from this era. In our number 9 spot today we have the Antikythera Mechanism. In the very early 1900s, researchers found an ancient computer just off of a Greek island. This mechanism remains on display at the National Archaeological Museum of Athens because it is honestly unbelievable. This analog computer may have had a ton of uses, and researchers aren't 100% sure about all of the ways it was used, but it is known to have been some sort of an astronomical calculator. It was able to predict eclipses and different planetary placements, and it was found 45 meters below the water in the wreck of a ship. This mechanism has been dated back to somewhere around 87 BC, and it is thought to have been created by the Corinthians at the time. Because of the uncertainty and mystery surrounding it, it is possible that this mechanism comes from another colony of ancient Greeks, but at this moment, with the knowledge and evidence we have, this is the best guess. In our number 8 spot today we have the Corinthian Helmet. Another artifact coming from the Corinthians of ancient Greece, we have a helmet. This would still be a great discovery if it was just a regular old helmet, but it is even better because of what lay inside. This helmet is from the Battle of Marathon, which happened in 490 BC, and this discovery gives us some pretty incredible insight into the protective armor that was worn at the time, what it was made out of, and even how it was created. The helmet was recovered in Greece in 1834, but here's where things get a lot more exciting. Within the helmet, they found the skull of the person who passed away while wearing it. That is insane. I can't imagine how horrifying of a discovery that would be, but once the shock wore off, it is absolutely fascinating. It's not cool that someone lost their head, but it's just unbelievable how this sat there for thousands of years waiting to be discovered. I don't know, it's just cool. In our number 7 spot today we have Venus. Carved from mammoth ivory, this little discovery pushed back the history of female figurative art to 35,000 years ago. This discovery didn't come until 2008, and it was found in the Hohlfels cave in Germany. The figurine, like other Venus artifacts, clearly represents a woman's body, although it's a little elaborate and exaggerated, with things like the arms, legs, and head being more of a suggestion. This figurine is actually the oldest undisputed example of a carving of a human being. Usually around this time, any art that depicted humans would have some sort of zoomorphic feature, so the fact that this one is strictly human is really a first. And I mean that quite literally. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I can't find the exact name or description of a tribe that this artifact belonged to, and I think that might be because no one really knows for sure. This artifact comes from prehistoric times in the late Stone Age, which is the era and time that had the earliest known evidence of organized settlements. In our number 6 spot today we have a Viking Sword. Back with another Viking artifact, archaeologists found a Viking sword called Ulfbert that they were able to date back to somewhere from 800 to 1000 AD, but upon further research they were absolutely astounded at what they had found. This sword was made with a level of sophistication that wasn't seen until at least 800 years later. The carbon content of the sword is 3 times higher than other swords of the time, and due to the impurities that were removed, the iron ore would have needed to be heated to at least 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This sword was so hard to believe to researchers that a blacksmith named Richard Furrer made a sword similar to this one, and he used only technology that would have been available at the time of its making. He said that the process was the most complicated thing he had ever made, and he even ended up having to use methods that weren't known to be used at the time in order to recreate it. In our number 5 spot today we have arts and crafts. About 100,000 years ago, a group of Homo sapiens found a cave that was on the coast of what is now South Africa, and it was here that they unloaded their gear, made a home for a short while, and started to work grinding iron-rich dirt and mixing it slowly with heated bone. They did this all in abalone shells, and it created a red, paint-like mixture that they then dipped a thin bone into, presumably to maybe paint something. Perhaps some sort of artifact, or maybe themselves. Either way, whatever they were painting, they ended up leaving the cave, but they left these little toolkits behind. Now, just 10 years ago, researchers found these paint kits still in the same cave, just now under a layer of dune sand. Not only did this discovery mark the oldest known example of humans making a compound mixture, but it's also the first known example of humans using a container, which is absolutely mind-blowing to think about. Study researcher Christopher Henshelwood, an archaeologist at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, said, quote, "To me, it's an important indicator of how technologically advanced people were 100,000 years ago. If this was a paint, it also indicates the likelihood that people were using substances in a symbolic way 100,000 years ago." While 100,000 years is a long time ago and this discovery is such an incredible find, it's wild to think about how that is really no time at all when we're talking about the history of the planet. It's definitely old in terms of human history though. That's for sure. In our number 4 spot today we have an ancient cairn. This is probably the item that made me laugh the most while I was researching for this video, and it comes to us from 1750 BC. This is a clay tablet that features a letter written on it. The letter is written in Akkadian cuneiform, and it was sent to the ancient city-state Ur and was made by a customer named Nani, who was sending it to a merchant named Ia Nasir. Basically, this is the oldest known customer complaint letter. Imagine how much work this took. Like, they couldn't go online to a 24/7 chat and complain. They had to find a big ass stone tablet, carve out the logo-syllabic script, and then somehow get it delivered to the merchant. Like, that's a next level Karen right there. Basically, I guess this merchant guy would travel around selling his copper, and on one particular occasion he agreed to sell some to Nanny. Nanny sent his servant out with some money to pick up this copper, but when he got there it wasn't good enough quality, so he didn't end up buying it. So now Nanny was irritated and wanted to complain about the poor copper quality, and he complained that his servant was also treated rudely during this whole entire ordeal. He said that at the time of his writing he had not received any copper, but that he had paid the money for it. I don't know about you guys, but I kinda like the drama of ancient Mesopotamia. In our number 3 spot today we have an ancient settlement. About 15 years ago, construction workers were digging up a spot during a project that was for the State Department of Transportation. It was then that they not only found hundreds of human remains, but they also found thousands of ancient artifacts. Turns out these workers accidentally stumbled upon and unearthed the remains of the largest indigenous settlement in the northwestern United States. From here, archaeological work was immediately conducted, and some 80,000 artifacts were recovered. This site is said to have been the home to the Lower Elwha Klalam tribe, which does still exist today. In 2014, after many years of discussions, 14 of these artifacts were handed back to the tribe, while the remaining ones were to be held at the Burke Museum of Natural History and Culture, which is located in Seattle, for, quote, safekeeping. The tribe was able to select the artifacts that they would like to keep, which truly only seems fair, and they chose some of the most incredible of the entire selection. These include a comb made from bone that has carvings on either side, 2 blanket pins that have been carved into the shape of a fawn's head and a halibut, as well as some stones that have different stories or teachings in them. It is said that there were about 900 of these stones found in total, and no 2 feature the same story or lesson. These items were given back to the tribe in a very special ceremony, which is something that really is nice to hear. In our number 2 spot today we have the Olmec Colossal Heads. The Olmec civilization has often been referred to as the mother culture of Mesoamerica, and from somewhere between 1400 to 400 BC, the civilization rose in the Mexican Gulf Coast. Now, over 2 millennia later, in 1862, a farmer was digging that very same land that they once lived on and came across an extremely large stone head. From here, researchers continued, and this turned out to be one of 17 stone heads that are thought to have been portraits of the rulers from that time. The statues are all somewhere from 5 to 10 feet tall, but they are extremely extremely heavy, like heavier than a full-grown elephant. I guess that's how we're now measuring weight. Some use imperial, some use metric, I use elephants. The reason it is believed that these stone heads were made to model rulers of the time is because they all share similar features, but they each are made with different expressions, slightly different facial features, and different headdresses. While the first discovery of the stone head was close to the source of the basalt stone that was used to make them, most of the heads are like 60 miles away from there. So we have absolutely no idea how these ancient people were able to make these stones. We just know it wasn't an easy task by any means. In our number 1 spot today, we have the stolen artifacts. This story is a little bit different than the others on this list today, but I came across it and felt compelled to include it because I think it's very interesting, but also very important. The Chugach tribe, which is indigenous to Alaska, has a very rich history, but in our modern times, a lot of the ancient artifacts from the tribe are all they have left, if they weren't stolen right from their hands. This tribe has lived in the Prince William Sound area for thousands of years, and many of the stories and traditions of the tribe and its origins have been passed down orally through generations. While these stories are an exceptionally important part of the culture, like anyone can understand, artifacts also have a very important place and can show the ancestors' ways of life. In the early 1800s, an explorer stole from the tribe 9 ancient artifacts that included burial masks and a cradle, and for years these items were stored in a museum all the way in Germany. These objects are sacred and have a strong spiritual significance to the tribe, but they also just weren't that explorers for the taking, regardless of their significance. Since the 1800s, the tribe has been working to have these artifacts returned to them, and finally, just a few years ago, they were. This was so tumultuous because while in the US there are some laws in place to protect indigenous artifacts, those laws don't exist in Europe. John Johnson from the Chugach Alaska Corporation says that he believes that the museum gained 100% knowledge by returning the artifacts and actually engaging with the tribes. He made a very valuable point. While it's nice for the museum to have stolen artifacts sitting in a box for hundreds of years, it's actually way more valuable to hear real accounts from the tribe and engage with them. You'll learn a lot more that way, that's for sure. Although these items should have never been stolen, the fact that they've been returned is now the most important part. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time. Bye! While the first discovery of the stone head was close to the source of the basalt stone that they, In our number 9 spot today, we have the Antikythera Mechanism. Antikythera